Our brains are filled with flaws and are a complete mess. Your brain, my brain, our ancestors' brain. Our brains take shortcuts whenever they can, analyzing our environment to make quick judgment without even us thinking intentionally. For many years, this quickness helped us survive, but today it causes a lot of problems in our society. It fails to understand that we're not living in the forest anymore. We all have fallen victims to this flawed thinking, but you would be surprised to know that how many people are still completely unaware of this phenomenon. So what we do is we take a quick look at someone's actions and immediately attribute their actions with their personality. We don't even think to consider that we don't have enough information about the situation. We witness an action and instantly judge their character based on their actions alone, completely ignoring our lack of information. For example, if your coworker is late to work, we're quick to assume that they're just lazy. But here's the funny thing, when we are late, we immediately blame our circumstances. We tell ourselves that we were late because of a sudden emergency, a heavy traffic, or a missed alarm. Because we actually have context of our own lives, we completely downplay the situation when the roles are reversed. After all, we can't be the problem, right? The irony is that your boss will see you walk in late one day and instantly label you as lazy. Somehow being late one day completely erases all the time that you were perfectly on time. Every single day someone is making this kind of judgments about you, forming all sorts of wrong assumptions, and you're doing exactly the same thing to them. This is a cognitive bias where we blame a person's personality for their actions while ignoring external situational factors. Yet when explaining our own behavior, we attribute everything to our circumstances. In other words, we constantly cut ourselves a slack while holding everyone else 100% accountable. Psychologists call this phenomena Fundamental Attribution Error. The term was first coined by Lee Ross in his 1977 paper, The Intuitive Psychologist and His Shortcomings, Distortion in the Attribution Process, building upon the groundbreaking research conducted by Edward Jones and Victor Harris a decade earlier. But the core idea goes back even further. Decades before Ross, Jones, or Harris, the Austrian psychoanalyst Gustav H. Heiser, often considered as father of attribution theory, wrote about a social blindness that led people to mistake situational issues with personality traits. As he put it this way, many things which happened between the two world wars would not have happened if social blindness had not prevented the privileged from understanding the predicament of those who were living in an invisible jail. Mainly privileged people were judging lower privileged people's situations as their character flaws. After all this research, we haven't learned much, did we? I'm going to share two studies which will help understand when people are too quick to judge, too quick to make judgments, and when the situations give much better explanation about their actions. In one study by Gilbert and their colleagues, participants watched a silent video of a woman who was behaving anxiously. For some participants, subtitles in the video indicated that the woman was being interviewed about uncomfortable topics like sexual fantasies or something. For others, the subtitles showed relatively boring topics such as ideal vacations. Right? On top of this, the researchers told some of them that they would have to take a memory test about the interview. Participants who were told about the additional quiz were partially distracted because they were trying to memorize the interview. The results showed that when participants were distracted, they attributed the woman's anxiousness to her personality, and they said that she was generally an anxious person. Meanwhile, the participants who were shown a boring subtitles, right, also thought she was an anxious person because there was no reason for that woman to be anxious when talking about vacations, right? Only the participants who were shown the uncomfortable topic, who were shown the anxiety-inducing version, understood and evaluated that she was made uncomfortable by the questions. They did not come to the conclusion that she was an anxious person. Is that she was made anxious by the questions itself. In another experiment, theology students were told to prepare themselves to give a brief talk in a nearby building, where one half were given the topic to discuss about Good Samaritan, while the other half were given a much more neutral topic. One group were told to hurry, while the other group were told they had plenty of time to go to the building. Right? On their way, they saw a man slumping on the side of the door, clearly in distress. Only 10% of students who were told they were late helped the man, and 63% of people who had plenty of time helped the man. The group told to give a talk on Good Samaritan was not likely to behave like one. The situation in this case had much better explanatory power than their behavior. Enough about studies. If someone cuts you off in traffic and honking other drivers, then you are most likely going to consider them as a bad driver or a rude person without having enough context. Maybe they're just trying to avoid an accident, or maybe they're trying to reach a hospital. There could be multitude of reasons for them to do that. And now you might be thinking this is a one-off situation, and what does it matter what I think about the person? It's not like we're going to see them anyways. You're right. For instances like that, we don't have enough time, and we're likely to get irritated and not think much of it. But this goes far beyond judging one's character for being late or even cutting in traffic. We're more likely to fall for this error in multiple instances affecting our daily lives, like the one in our workplace, with our co-workers, friends, or the people we meet for the first time, and also give rise to lots of economic issues that we see today, which I'll get to it in a minute. Once you understand this is happening almost in every aspect of our life, and sadly many people have fallen victim from this behavior from people of higher authority. Like for example, too often mothers are blamed and accused of being bad parents because their child is screaming or the mother has been very stern to their child. Do you know who are most likely going to blame them? Funnily enough, most of the time people who have never been parents are the ones blaming them, whereas parents on the other hand are most likely going to understand the mother's situations and not judge her too quickly. We're in another scenario, we're likely going to get very impressed on a great first impression of a date, not realizing that that might not be the same person in real life in other situations. On the other hand, a poor experience on the first date might turn us off, even though there might be more to them than what we just saw, and you might lose the person you're looking for. Police might make this error while interviewing someone. If the person seemed quiet or anxious, it might make them think that they should be taken off streets or find a reason to catch them, when the person is just uncomfortable in that situation. Oftentimes we also see people blaming a victim of crime as if it's their fault for being in that situation, neglecting all the wrongdoings of the criminal. Finally, fundamental attribution error also happens in large groups, known as group attribution error. This happens when we look at a specific group and without considering the situation, circumstances, attribute a single trait to the entire group or the entire demographic. This leads to broad stereotypes like all software developers are nerds, all performers are extroverts, or all teenagers are moody, while completely disregarding individual context and culture. Culture factors play a significant role in this. For individualistic societies like USA, Australia, UK, personal accountability are often promoted when they're most likely to assume that me as an individual bears all responsibilities for my actions and attribute a person's behavior to their personality. They're most likely to show fundamental attribution error. This can lead us to ignore important systemic factors that influence behavior, such as discrimination, poverty, or social inequality. For example, if we blame all criminal behavior on the bad person, on bad people, and fail to look at the underlying causes of crime, we may well find that we simply increase prison population rather than improving aspects of society and systems that contribute to high crime rates. Research has also found that people are generally less prone to the fundamental attribution error, are also less likely to endorse racist beliefs. Imagine that. People seem to have different levels in the attribution complexity, a trait that describes how people generally explain the behaviors of others. They're more motivated to explain human behavior, have a preference for complex answers, and also have a stronger awareness of how social situations drive human behavior. Meaning, racist people often lack the ability to think beyond their basic instincts. How do you recognize this behavior? We cannot control how other people think of us. How are they judging from one mistake? Clearly, we see a lot of people making judgment about us from singular instances without having the context. But in order to know if you are judging them the same way as well, don't think of this behavior as our destiny. It might be easier to think that way, but we can change the way we think. First, find out if you have enough context to explain their poor behavior or habit. Maybe you are more privileged than them and do not know their living conditions. Try to put yourself in their situation and think if you do the same, or try to understand the situation before making a judgment, or maybe reserve the judgment for a later time. Even though I said all of this, it doesn't mean that from tomorrow we're going to not fall for this error. We definitely will. But being aware of this will probably help us have better understanding of our surrounding, and maybe over time we will be able to notice when we fall for this error, and instead of making this mistake 100% of the time, we will gradually make less number of times. Bottom line is, this is not just a theory to learn and forget. This is something to practice, and people will appreciate you for understanding their pain, because I think we're losing empathy nowadays, which is not great for our civilization. Maybe becoming self-aware about this can help us increase empathy towards others. If you watched till now, thanks for watching, and subscribe to my channel as I have more such videos I want to make.